Welcome to Quick and Quinky, where we take your burning questions about kink, relationships, and everything in between and break them down into bite-sized answers. Let's dive in. You don't have to find your community, right? It's not a necessity. I know a ton of people who are involved in kink and don't, but here's why it kind of can be a necessity, or why you should strongly consider finding your community with kink. First of all, it's good for the community and it's good for you, okay? You have the opportunity to meet other people who are interested in the same things you're into. This can be a lonely practice, but when you get involved in the community, you meet a bunch of people who are into the same things you're into, or even variations of it, but you're meeting people who understand what it's like to live kinky, who understand what it's like to want to explore kinks. And dating is hard, being kinky can be difficult. It's nice to have other people around you who are into the same things. Most of my friends here in Vegas are from the kink community because when I moved here, I was like, how do you make friends as an adult? So I got on FetLife. I started to look for what events were happening. I found a group called Vegas Toolbox, and I went to their online orientation so that I could start going to educational classes. Then I found out about some munches that were supposed to be good. And technically, I could have just gone straight to a munch, but it was good to meet people, see who I got along with, and then go to the munches they recommended. From there, it sort of spiraled. I'd go to a munch, which is a plainclothes meetup of kinky people. You go to like a diner or somewhere where you can munch on food and just talk to each other. To find your specific kink community, I think start general and filter down. Here's what I would do. I would get on FetLife and make a profile if you don't have one already. Yes, you can find events elsewhere, but a lot of them are still posted on FetLife. For some reason, I hear people say, oh, FetLife's dangerous, and that's 100% true, but so is Instagram if you start meeting random people from it. So I guess that's neither here nor there. I'm just tired of people who are saying, don't get on FetLife, it's dangerous. It's like, so is Facebook Marketplace. It depends on what you use it for. You have to be cautious. So get on FetLife and make a profile. Then navigate to the events page, and FetLife's gotten really good. You can filter by event type: BDSM party, social event, educational event, sex party. I would say filter first by the social and educational events, because those are going to be your like plain clothes meetup a lot of the time where you're just meeting other kinky people, and it's a great way to dip your toe in the water, okay? So I would start there. There are even specific munches for specific communities. Like there are rope munches, spanking munches, impact munches, master-slave type of munches. So it depends on the dynamic and the kink. So you can start there, meet people who you're getting along with, and then find out, well, what events do they recommend? And then check out those events. Here are some things you should look for in a healthy and welcoming kink community. Because safety is important, you want to make sure you're going somewhere where people look out for each other, where they give you the lay of the land when you get there, and they're really genuinely welcoming. So when I went to my first munch, the organizer stood up, introduced himself, asked me a little bit about myself, and then he sat me with people who he thought I might get along with. So he did a great job of facilitating that. He's amazing. I actually had him on the podcast, him and his wife, Jim and Veronica. I credit them a lot with how well I was integrated into the community. So I was really lucky with that experience, but I've had experiences where there are red flags. And one of the things that normally tips me off, this might just be a woman-to-woman thing, but I have had women come up to me and say, be careful of that guy, be careful of that guy. And sometimes there's just like one weirdo that no one wants to talk to, but other times you hear 2 or 3 people tell you to be careful, and you start to wonder, well, why is that person still in the community? If there's more than one person like that, that's a huge red flag for me, because it means that the organizers are not properly vetting and taking complaints seriously. So that's one red flag. The second red flag is when there's an imbalance of ages or groups within the community, because it just sometimes creates this almost predator vibe. If it's all these young girls and then a bunch of older men, the question is, where are the younger guys too? Have they been scared out by the older crew who sometimes can be a little gatekeepy? That's a red flag for me. I mean, and it goes both ways. Sometimes it's older women who are super gatekeepy and they can be bitchy to young girls. When I started making content, that was my number one thing. I was like, fuck the gatekeepers. Like, I'm done with them. And I was so done with them. I was like, I make content to say fuck the gatekeepers and make this information more accessible to everyone who ever wants the info, you know? I know I've talked a lot about FetLife, but you wouldn't believe it. There are also communities online There are certain Discord groups and also Facebook groups that you can get involved in. So I would search through there. And then if you're looking for more events, Eventbrite in your city might actually have a lot listed. So if you go to Eventbrite and you can, I think, filter for adult events or something along those types of parties. So there is a lot of information out there. I just think FetLife is the easiest because it's all concentrated and then you can see which of your friends are going to it because it is like a social media site for kink. Facebook, if you start following creators who post about kink in general, sometimes they post events that are happening and in different communities and they have their own discords as well. There's like a lot of places where you can find that. Like the Patreon I set up where twice a month I meet with a group of people who are all kinky and dating and we sort of discuss the highs and lows of it. We give each other advice and we just talk through what it's like, what our challenges have been and what our wins have been. So there's community around dating kinky as well. That's one thing I will say about us kinksters. There's a lot of us out there who crave community. So we create it ourselves and we'll put in the work. We'll create the parties to create the spaces we want to exist. So we can feel more comfortable and make others feel more comfortable to go down the paths we want to go down and explore the things we want to explore. I've been to so many in-person and online events and I've met amazing people in both, right? I'm going to be honest about it. You would think that the in-person events, oh, people left their house, they got dressed up, they really committed to going out. Not the case either, you know? People show up as they are, and that's sort of like what we love about the kink community too. It's like no one's expecting fireworks, right? Except it really disappoints people too. People are disappointed by their local communities because they're not full of these beautiful, kinky people that we've been fed like pictures of to believe that like, oh, kink is all these size 0 people in bondage and stirrups and like, I don't know, dressed as horses in like beautiful gilded, I don't know, costumes. It's not like that online. It's not like that in person at these social events. Sure, you can go somewhere like OnlyFans and pay to see someone dressed as your ideal kinky person. Or you can pay for an app and listen to stories about like from your ideal kinky man, but it's not actually like that online or in real life for these social events. Real people dressed like me, showing up as themselves, talking about the thing that they love. I will say that the community invites people to show up as they are, you know, and express themselves. So at like the social events that are in bars and pubs, yeah, people are going to be dressed vanilla. But when you go in person to an event, you're encouraged to be yourself. And the advice I always give my coaching clients who are going to parties for the first time is show up as your most authentic self. Follow the dress code, yes. If it's fancy dress, do it. But if you feel like wearing a kilt, wear a kilt. If your alter ego or your kinky self wears a top hat, wear a freaking top hat to the event. Be that version of yourself that feels authentic to you. If it's a Victorian era woman in full getup, like head to toe, this is the place for you. Arguably, you can dress like that anywhere, but I feel like you're going to be celebrated in these communities for showing up as yourself. Okay, I go to a lot of parties alone, and it's partly because I love to go to new places, and sometimes I don't have a group of people to go with. So I have a few tips of like what I do to introduce myself. Sometimes if I'm going somewhere totally new, I'll contact the organizer on FetLife and say, hey, I'm showing up to the party, would love to meet you in person beforehand, or I'll come find you. The really good parties will have someone to greet you, ask if it's your first time, and give you a tour. Okay. Sometimes I'll tell that person, I'm kind of shy. Do you mind introducing me to anyone? I don't mind calling out that I'm shy. Other times, I sort of, before I go into the party, I always have a little talk with myself of like, we're all just here meeting people for the first time. Let's see how it goes. Be confident. And I'll have that, like, I'll big myself up in a way, almost like mantras, so that I'm ready when I go in.
All right, Kinkster, let's talk about pleasure. Not just mine, yours too. If you're enjoying this episode of the Kink Consultant, I need you to do me a little favor, and I promise it'll feel oh so good. Take a second and give this podcast a 5-star rating. Just imagine your finger sliding all over that 5th star, pressing down, giving it exactly the kind of attention it deserves. Yeah, that's it. And you know what happens when you do? I get all hot and bothered knowing you're out there, showing your appreciation. Plus, every time you leave a review, a naughty little brat somewhere gets that spanking they've been begging for. So be a good listener and tap that star, won't you? Thanks, love. Now let's get back to the fun.
And then my go-to is I will find someone who is around my age and feels like maybe we'd get along. Okay, so most recently I was at a party and I introduced myself to a couple and I said, "Hi, I'm Amanda. Do you come to these parties often?" I open it up with a curiosity thing of like, instead of like launching into something about me, I ask about them and then try and get the conversation to flow from there. If not, I try and move on to the next group or person. In an example like this, I talked to most recently at the party, I introduced myself, asked if they came there often. Turned out they were from out of town, which is really cool. We talked a little bit about the local scene where they lived. And then I said, I'm going to go get a drink, right? And I went off, and on my way to get a drink, I then introduced myself to someone new. And I said, "Oh my God, I love your collar. Where did you get it? And oh my gosh, this corset." And these were genuine things. I really did love her collar and corset. And it turned out her partner was getting her some water from the bar. So by the time her partner got back, we were already deep in conversation, you know? So those are like my intro things. It's sort of complimenting people authentically and also asking questions about themselves. If you introduce yourself, they're not like, "Ooh, what the fuck?" Maybe they're in the middle of a conversation. And that's another thing. Timing is everything. You don't want to inject yourself into a conversation. And another thing that's kind of awkward is if people are already in a conversation and you sort of edge your way in, as opposed to just being like, "Oh, I heard you were talking about this. Do you mind if I join the conversation?" I prefer a direct approach instead of like, because they might say no, you know, or like, "Actually, this is a private conversation." And sometimes that rejection hurts a little bit, but you kind of got to just hold it together and sort of realize it's not personal. That was a private conversation. Let me move on. And that's happened to me. You know, it's like, okay, this is a cliquey friend group. Those things happen when people go to the same parties year in, year out for a really long time. It's not personal. They just have their group. Now I need to go find mine. And I know it can be really nerve-wracking to go to one of these events, especially if it's your first time. But ultimately, these are still social events. They are there for people to meet with each other and enjoy something that they all love together. So at the end of the day, you're still at a social event. The purpose is to be social and meet new people. Most people are showing up with the excitement of getting to meet new people. Sometimes we create a community online of people who live across the country, across the globe. And those people can be just as meaningful in our lives as the people who we meet weekly at parties or at munches, because they're going through the same thing we're going through a lot of the time. I mean, the friends you make, regardless of location, are still friends. Sometimes it's hard when you get into the relationship side of things because a DS dynamic or even a Dom sub scene partner, not being able to receive physical aftercare can be quite jarring for people. It's a lot easier to get catfished like online instead of meeting people in person, because you can fake a lot online and get away with a lot that as soon as you see someone in person, they're different, right? So something I recommend people do just to keep themselves safe is FaceTime. There is not one single excuse in today and age. If they can talk to you on the phone, they can find a way to FaceTime you. They can download WhatsApp to their phone. They can get on a Zoom call, Google Meets. There are so many options, and there are so many free options to do with like face-to-face call. And that can save you as well, like just enforcing that early. Oh, one more thing that I like to do when I meet people online, and this is just in dating, is people can have these whole profiles set up and it seems like them. I will make them take a selfie in the moment, and I'll do something like this and send a selfie. And I say, send a selfie with you doing the same gesture so that you know it's fresh. Yeah. So those are just some of the things. I think safety is super important, and knowing who you're talking to is important. There are just so many bad actors out there, even in person. It's like tenfold online. So you got to protect yourself. Some other ways that you can protect yourself is, I think a lot of times, especially on the sub side, subs want to be nice. They don't want to push too hard. They're told, get in your lane, or this is how you're going to act. If it's your first time exploring submission, it can be so exciting. You can actually be in what we call sub frenzy, where you're just so excited to try everything. You're going to try everything, and you're just going to be more submissive than you might normally be because of the excitement to try everything. You find someone and you feel like, oh my God, someone finally understands me. And it can feel super special because they're telling you everything you want to hear. It's just like the books or movies, and you're having these amazing experiences, but you skip over the part where there's communication, or the person you're talking to tells you this is how it's supposed to be. You need to have communication. If something doesn't feel right, you need to talk to them about it and say, I'm not feeling right about this. We need to go more in depth about this. Can we have a conversation? You need to be talking to someone who's willing to have the conversation. And if they're hardlined, I'm the dom, you're the sub, this is what we're doing, or even vice versa, they're not for you. If they are not willing to have a conversation and they're very hardline about how I'm the dom, I'm the sub, I'm a brat, this is how I am, and they're not willing to come to the table and be like, okay, what do we need to negotiate? What do we need to tweak here? Cut them. Don't even engage in trying to like convince them. Don't bargain with them. Cut them. If I can just say one thing to everyone, it's that in order to be in a community, you have to be part of the community, and that requires getting out there. And I know it's tough sometimes. It's tough to get dressed at the end of a week and go out, but being active in the community is what keeps it alive. Okay. I really cannot stress the importance enough of getting out there and talking to people. I meet a lot of people who say like, oh, well, there's just no community where I am. And it's kind of one of those things you have to start showing up. I actually have a friend who does this when he posts on FetLife about a munch. He's trying to start it up. And his point is, in order to have this, we need to start it and be present at the beginning. And that's something, if you are starting it, show up, be there, and put the time in to build what you want, because you get out of it what you put into it. Okay, so show up, be present. If you've been going to events for a few months, be the person you wish existed when you started going to those events. A good online example of where community is starting and we all need to be showing up, or I think it's great to show up, is the app Meet Kinksters. They're really focused more on the social side and the dating side of kink. So when you go there, you can see everyone in your community who's kinky, and you can also filter by people who are into the kinks you're into. And it's not just a dating app. It really is more of that, like, here are the kinky people in your area, and it's great to be able to search that way. So that's a really good example of something that's starting new, and I think we should all be showing up to and trying out. So meetkinksters.com/TKC for 50% off premium for your first month. I highly recommend checking that out to meet other kinksters in your area. Got a question or something you want me to tackle in the next episode? Drop it in the comments. And until next time, keep on kinking on.